I want to talk a little defensive line, though, in this class, because Chris Jones being the top guy on our free agent list, Jaguars' Josh Allen at number 3, Panthers edge defender Brian Burns at 5, Justin Madubuike from the Baltimore Ravens at 6, Christian Wilkins of the Dolphins at 7, Danielle Hunter at 12, Leonard Williams at 16, Bryce Huff at 18, DJ Reader at 19, Chase Young at 28. There's a lot of defensive line talent. I've lumped in, of course, edge defenders and interior defensive line. If you need defensive line help, there will be some options out there.
Yeah, even if you, again, start picking off the ones that are going to get franchise tagged and don't hit the market.
I think Josh Allen, for one, is going back to Jacksonville.
Absolutely. He will get franchise tagged. Chris Jones will be interesting. They had that contract dispute last offseason. They didn't come to a long-term accord there. It's possible he hits the market. Who knows? Brian Burns, I think, has a pretty good chance of hitting the market as well, given the way they've sort of treated him over the last few years of not trading him away, keeping hold of him. Madubuike would be an obvious candidate for a franchise tag. Wilkins, maybe. Danielle Hunter probably hits the open market the way his deal has gone in Minnesota. Leonard Williams, they just traded for. Probably not letting him walk, I wouldn't have thought. Bryce Huff would be a lot to franchise tag for a guy that is an amazing situational player for them, but they've sort of loaded up on the defensive line. He's the type of player you generally let walk when that happens. And then DJ Reader, Chase Young, there will be definitely options even when you lose those top group of guys that get tagged.
Kwesi was trying to help us with the perception, the public perception at PFF.
In Matthew Collar's book.
What's that?
In Matthew Collar's book.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, he was saying he actually uses PFF.
Right.
Right? Because, it is a tool that, decision makers should use. But, the Vikings are going to be a fascinating team this offseason, what they do with Danielle Hunter. And then I think, to me, all of the teams that have the long-term quarterback, everything that the Chiefs do, just fascinating, right? What are they going to do? How are you, when you have the quarterback locked up, what are you going to do to build around him during that time? Same thing with the Bengals. Same thing with the Bills. So the Bengals having DJ Reader, I do think there's a point where Cincinnati just can't keep the band together. And then you say, okay, where do we deploy all of these resources? Same thing Kansas City has to figure out with a Chris Jones, with a L'Jarius Sneed. And, they already made the difficult decision to say, Tyreek Hill or 5 draft picks. We'll take the 5 draft picks to reset the cap. And that may have set them up to be able to keep Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed here.
I mean, there's a bunch of teams that are facing an immediate franchise tag decision. Not just do we tag this player, yes or no, but which one of the players we have hitting free agency that we would like to retain are we keeping around? Because we would like to keep them both, but we only have one franchise tag. The decision the Giants had last season with Saquon and Daniel Jones. The Bengals are one of those teams where DJ Reader has some of the most sort of powerful on-off splits, of any player in the NFL. That defense misses him badly when DJ Reader isn't on the field, and he plays that position, not just defensive line, not just defensive interior, but that nose tackle, run-stuffing specialist that can also still make some noise as a pass rusher. He makes a real impact, and there aren't that many of those guys around, but they're probably going to use their franchise tag on T. Higgins. So the Bengals are facing this thing saying, if we want to keep Reader around, we have to get a deal done with him. We can't tag him.
Right, and Tyler Boyd also hits free agency for Cincinnati. So again, it's every time the draft comes up, we're thinking, I'm always saying, hey, draft those high-value positions, the places where you might have to let guys walk. They do have Trey Hendrickson locked up, but if you're going to lose a Tyler Boyd, lose a DJ Reader, you're going to have to get younger at those spots or go to the middle-class free agent route, right? So again, I think those teams, the teams that can't spend a ton because they have the quarterback are really interesting, and then the teams that are going to spend a lot, the teams with the most effective cap space, the Commanders, Titans, Patriots, Colts, Texans, all those teams, are they going to go nuts? The Patriots in particular, they've had one year where they went crazy a couple years ago.
Yeah.
After Nick Caserio left. And we said maybe Caserio was holding the credit card, and Bill wanted to go nuts. They spent a lot of money that one year. Gerard Mayo has said, we have money to spend, we're going to do it. Can't wait to see what they end up doing, because, they need drastic changes, especially on offense.
And they do appear to have, I'm sure it's not the same dynamic in terms of Gerard Mayo wields the Bill Belichick-sized influence in that building total control over everything. But it's not like they've radically pared back that job description. You know, Gerard Mayo is still seemingly in charge of an awful lot there, and he's going to have significant personnel say, if not total and complete say, the way Belichick did. You know, if Gerard Mayo wants to spend, if he wants to go get some players, if he wants to make a splash, I think it'll happen.
As far as the defensive tackle talent out there, we mentioned Chris Jones, Matabike, Christian Wilkins. I don't know if they're more valuable in today's NFL with there's not a lot of really good interior defensive linemen across the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't think college has sent a lot to the NFL since 2019, Christian Wilkins draft class. And of the 5 first-rounders, he's the only one that didn't sign a long-term deal with his original team, the Dolphins.
So, yeah, college hasn't sent a lot of them in and doesn't appear to be accelerating that, you know, anytime soon.
Right.
Every year we look at the draft and you're like, there's a ton of edge rushers here, edge rushers for days, incredibly deep class. You're like, interior, I mean, there's a couple of guys, but outside of that, I mean, okay, you know, last year you'll find them lower down, right? Kobe Turner with a 3rd round pick. 3rd round, right? Not 5th?
He was 3rd round, but yeah, he was projected to go in the 5th. Correct.
Okay. So, you know, there are some of these guys that are hitting, but it's not the giant draft class that some other positions are. So, and I think those players are, maybe they're not becoming more important, but the rarity, the scarcity of them is sort of driving up the impact that they can have because not everybody has them anymore.
I always use the Shy Tuttle deal last year. You know, just a guy that is a average starter type, making a lot, making a decent amount of money. The interior defensive line has made a lot of money over the last cycle or 2 in free agency, so those guys will be coveted this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the offensive line group is kind of interesting. It's not, there's not a ton of star power in it, but there are a lot of quality starting players, like you mentioned, right? The bargain basement type shopping. Tyron Smith is reaching the end of his career, but he's still only 33.
Could somebody tell the boys to keep it down over there?
McAfee, do you want to go and...
somebody, Dave, go over there and say, we're trying to record over here. If they could just keep it down.
I don't think Sulf is the right person to be enforcing the decorum. I think you need to go over there.
Do I have to go over there?
Yeah.
Listen, we're trying to record. You guys are screaming about some sort of poker game or whatever they got going on.
I'm reasonably certain that if you went over there, you would be the largest person in that crowd, and you could assert some dominance.
Yeah, but Pat could, like, shooting star press me or something. Dude's wrestled at WrestleMania.
You worked out this week.
I did hit the gym, and I was feeling good. About won the day.
Yeah, you're good
Lost
to go.
today, but we won yesterday.
Lost today.
Yeah, at the gym.
Yeah, so we're even for the week.
Tyron Smith being the biggest name to hit.
So he's
free
like,
agency,
I mean,
but
it feels like Tyron Smith has been reaching the end of his career for like half a decade, but he's still only 33 in an era where tackles are playing to 40.
He's just been on his last legs for the last 6 years.
Right, and he's going to get hurt. He's like Teron Armstead, but he's valuable. But if you go beyond Tyron Smith, the one to me that's always jumped out from the free agent list this year is Michael Owenu, who's 26 years old, has played his best football at right tackle, the more valuable position than guard, but has played all over that New England offensive line. And for some reason, the Patriots have never seemed to fully buy into him as like a high-quality player.
Right.
I'm really curious if the rest of the league thinks the same way, and if he's just a guy that for some reason seems to play much better than the perception, or if the rest of the league is like the Patriots have been sleeping on this guy the entire time, and there's like a massive bidding war for his services, and he becomes like the most coveted right tackle in free agency.
The PFF grades have been really good for Nwenu. That's what you're hinting at here.
Yeah.
And every now and again, we do differ from what the league perception is.
Right.
We had it with an 86 in 2021, 79 grade in 22, 71, dropped a little bit last year. But this has been shuffling back and forth between guard and tackle as a 6th-round pick.
There are some parallels between Michael Owenu and Evan Mathis way back in the day when the Bengals didn't believe in Evan Mathis. They were rotating him at left guard with Nate Livings, right? And Nate Livings was the guy that got the big free agency deal from Dallas, and there was nothing in the data that said that that was worth doing, that actually Evan Mathis was a much better player. He signs as almost like an afterthought in that free agency dream team the Eagles assembled, and he ends up being like the only successful player to come from it. And he ends up becoming an all-pro, right? Eventually, teams caught on to the fact that this guy was just playing really well down in, down out. And, you know, we're fighting this sort of PR battle of what PFF grades mean. They're not going to be perfect. We're going to differ from people at times. I don't think we're going to differ to the degree of saying a guy is an elite, consistent playmaker. Actually, no, it turns out he's garbage. We might be off on a play here or there. We might be off, but the larger the sample size and when it's consistent week after week after week, year after year after year, if they're saying he is that, he probably is that.
When it comes to the offensive line, there's 4 names in the top 25. Tyron Smith, who we mentioned, Trent Brown from the Patriots, Kevin Dotson, the guard from the Rams, and then Onwenu at 25. Those top 3 guys all have like a yeah but to them. Tyron Smith and his age and his health. Trent Brown basically quit on the Patriots last year. He's been a good player when he's been out there, but he's also on the other side of 30 now. And again, he quit on the Patriots. Whatever that falling out is, maybe it wasn't his fault whatsoever. I don't know, but there was a falling out there. Kevin Dotson was a guy that we liked early in his career from a grading standpoint. The Steelers were a similar situation. They never completely bought into Dotson. There was a disconnect between, or just a difference between his pass blocking and run blocking grades. But he just put it all together with the Rams, number 2 graded guard last year. So is he just a one-year wonder would be the question there. But Onwenu is probably the most intriguing because of the positional versatility, 26 years old, and the consistency. We talk sometimes about draft position. Like if he was a first rounder with that level of production, you'd be like, oh, we got to lock him up, or whatever. But he's a 6th round pick, so sometimes that the league still thinks of them as a 6th round pick.
And then you have the market. Robert Hunt as well, the most dynamic yards after the catch man on the offensive line market.
Just get the ball in his hands.
It's trickier if you're playing him at guard. It's harder to get that guy in the open field.
I think when you get into the, Jonah Williams, started at left and right tackle for the Bengals. Probably never really lived up to the first round billing. He's coming off a 61 grade in 22 when he was injured, and then last year moved to right tackle, similar type of grade at 58. So it's a bit of a reclamation project there.
Yes, I mean he took a big step backwards in his career. Had been an average level starter on a bad offensive line, which always looks worse. Took a big step backwards in a year where he injured his knee. Let's not forget that. Had a bad injury that looked at the time like he was going to be done for the year.
And by the way, that's what we mean when we talk about context. We don't just see, oh, this guy was terrible, theirs is great. Like we know that injuries matter and competition, like those things matter when we're trying to figure out what to do with the numbers.
Right, so took a huge step back that year, played badly, gave up 13 sacks or whatever it was. Like really rough year for him. They moved him to the right side to accommodate Orlando Brown, and he basically backed that up with the exact same performance that he had when he was hurt the year before on the left side. So now you're looking at this guy and saying, at his best, he was an average caliber starter, maybe a little bit, a guy that you would look to replace anyway, and he hasn't played at his best on either side of the line for the last couple of years, albeit one of them having a sort of injury asterisk attached to it, but that's not a sell high type of situation for Jonah Williams. A team might look at him and say, we liked him coming out, and we really like him as a person, as a leader, as a locker room guy, whatever, and we think there's potential to be untapped, but it is a big reclamation project, like you're saying.
I think if your team is O-line needy, my recommendation is often looking in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s on the PFF rankings. Not because the players aren't as good, but I do think that there's value there. Because again, hey, there's Dan Marino.
Dan.
You don't need elite players across the board. You do need, at best, you'd like to have 5 good enough starters. There are guys like John Simpson, guard, at 110. Josh Jones, who we've talked about a ton on this show, who could play tackle at the NFL level, be a starting tackle. Even a Donovan Smith, who's about to start in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. He could be just a good enough starting left tackle. Graham Glasgow out there for the Lions.
I mean, you could do some really good, I don't want to, bargain basement sounds a little bit, harsh, but you could do some really good discount shopping in this offensive line and get some very, very good players. Like Josh Jones, who we talked before, is I think a pretty good caliber starting left tackle, and has been unlucky with where he's ended up in terms of competition and where he is in the pecking order of the teams that he's been signed to. Josh Jones could start and upgrade quite a lot of teams at left tackle in the NFL. Jonah Jackson, who is going to be missing for the Lions with his injury late in the playoffs, he's a good quality starting player. Like, you could overhaul an offensive line relatively cheap just shopping the mid-level of the offensive line market here.